All right, session 16, your last session in the B3 Guide. I hope it's been a good journey for you first. Matthew 28, just a classic passage on discipleship. Hope this spurs your group into really thinking about how they're making disciples. So even at the end of this, you're going to, after the reading, you're going to do the covenant work, which is going to reflect back on how they signed that covenant and what were some critical aspects of it, how that transformed their life, those kind of things. Some great questions there. I hope that you'll reflect upon. That last one's really important, and we've been talking about this: where and who will gather, what will you engage to grow, and where will you go to serve locally and globally together. This is just continuing the process of the D group. Are y'all going to keep gathering in the same amount? Maybe speed it up, maybe slow it down. What resource are you going to use to grow? Coming from this, I would recommend Living God's Word by J. Scott Duvall and J. Danny Hayes, or maybe go into something, a book that you might like. Something needs to change, counterculture, something like that. Whatever you think, man. I hope to just be able to support you. If you need the resources, let us know. The church will order them for you. Okay, as you engage this last session, session 16. I want you to be thinking about, as you're leading them through this, be thinking about this. What you train them in, what you have trained them in, is how they're going to replicate their D group pretty heavily. They're taking notes, they're learning from you, they're growing from you. So really be intentional with this last session of helping them to see that how Timothy did that, or how we saw outlined in Timothy of that process, like the grandfather in the faith, the father in the faith, and the son in the faith. That kind of just being able to ask them, how many generations are here? And seeing that now it's time for them to kind of have that son in the faith as well. So be really intentional about kind of asking some of those questions about how they're feeling about it. This actually the reason I say this is this might actually help y'all to answer that last question of where do y'all need to go next? What do they need help with? They might need help in training them how to make disciples. You've been investing in them, making them into disciples. They might need some training and some shifting. You might need to go to some of the things you learned from your leadership devotional and leadership training with me, getting some access to some books that would help them. Y'all may go through a study that helps them with making disciples. If you say, man, my group really wants to do some D groups in their own places, like in their workplaces. They want to launch a D group, 3 to 5 men or women in their workplace. How could I train them in that? I mean, I would point you to Mentor by Chuck Lawless. I'd point you to our podcast, 3D Discipleship, and look at the episodes early on informal discipleship. I think those will help you there. But as you're going towards that last page, that covenant work page, I'd encourage you when you're working through the gather, go, grow concept and memorizing Matthew 28, try to help them communicate where they need to go forward. It's one thing to go, hey guys, where do you think we need to go? It's another thing to go, hey, in this training, what are some things that you learned? What are some things you didn't learn? What are some things that could help you understand? So you're asking questions and letting them respond, and then sitting, listening, and coming to a conclusion of, this might be the best route for us. This is where we really need to move forward. I've done this with my D groups, trying to discern, where do we need to go from here? It's just such an important question to ask, because if you're on a long journey together, making sure that you're doing the right thing is so critical. Otherwise, you'll get to the end of it, and like the question with 5 key questions with the intentional aspect of it, you'll get to the end of it and go, we didn't even really do anything. We didn't even where did we get to? So be really critical, be really diligent and intentional about asking good questions right now to know where you need to go next. In the covenant work time, create a culture of honesty. This is an important moment for the whole discipleship process. Your faithfulness to the covenant was critical throughout the B3 Guide, and letting them reflect on this and being honest and transparent and you being gracious and kind but also truthful in this moment will set them up to replicate a D group really well too. You want to hold the covenant to a high status. The reason for that is because you're training them in their D group to hold it to a high status as well in there, to make sure their people are honest and transparent, but locked down in what they share outside of the D group. making sure that your people are staying engaged with the B3 Guide, staying engaged with reading and spiritual disciplines, going on the missional experiences. All these aspects are important, and so reflecting on the covenant will help you to ask those questions. You can ask the question, if you were to do missional experiences in a D group of your own, what would you do? How would you have planned it? All those different questions. Now you're letting them see what you did, and you're asking them to prepare for what they can do. So it helps them along on the journey. I think this is a good time to give them the leadership devotional. The leadership notebook. It includes the leadership devotional in there. We formally call this the Navigating Discipleship Resources, so that may be which one you have. But the leadership devotional notebook for D groups, go ahead and get your group that and let them start working through that, so that by the time you get done with Living God's Word or whatever resource you use, by the time you get done with that, they've already gone through their training and they're starting to meet with me. And when they're at the end of the D group with you, they're able to be launched out. So these are some great things to think through. I hope you've enjoyed going through the B3 Guide. Love to hear your feedback so we can make it better. I'd point you to kind of reflecting upon all these different sessions and some of the things that you feel like you did well, some of the things you didn't feel like you did well, and growing in those, and maybe sharing those with me. I'd love to hear how you grew in those. All right, last thing. Hopefully, at the end of this session, you guys have come up with a new missional experience. We want you to have two, at least one done by the 8th session and one done by the 16th session. This, again, helps you bond together. So if you haven't done one, really make sure you do one. And they're just great. They're great moments. Let me know what you've done. I love to track these things to see what all these D groups are doing. I think it's really cool. As we close and we think about ending this B3 Guide, let me just encourage you, as your group walks away, think about this. Make sure that, because this is what discipleship programs do, and this is not a discipleship program, this is a relationship you've created. Though the program ends, the relationship doesn't. Okay, so programs end, discipleship relationships don't. So as you guys kind of move away from this, be really intentional about your words, what you say. We're not done. This isn't over. We're just moving to a different resource. So discipleship relationships aren't ending. It's just what you're using to do it that's changing. I think that matters with your words. So be really clear on that. We love you guys. I'm praying for you constantly. Hope this has been a wonderful time for you. And let me know how I can help you and support you.